Welcome back. Tonight we will fall asleep inside an address that didn't ask for attention. If you wake in the middle, the road will still be there, turning in a gentle curve, wearing the same quiet trees as a scarf. It is late autumn in upstate New York. The sky is the color of a kettle that boiled yesterday and decided to rest today. A two-lane road passes fields that have already done their work for the year. Fences lean in a companionable way, as if they are old neighbors who no longer try to stand perfectly straight. A mailbox waits with the patience of a cow. The wind opens and closes the pages of the hedges. Here most days are measured in school buses and farm trucks and a single delivery van that knows where the potholes are. But on one particular day in 1957, the road begins to notice new behavior. It notices clean cars from cities far away. It notices men who look at maps as if the maps might flinch. It notices jackets that are too warm for the weather because the wearers are used to sidewalks and canyons of brick. The road has no grievances, it simply observes. Earlier, a house at the end of a long drive made simple plans. There would be guests, there would be food, there would be respect exchanged like calling cards, there would be the business of business described in a language of nods and careful sentences that do not run fast. The house asked for cold meats, for bread that does not crumble, for coffee that to endure refills. It asked for ashtrays. It asked for chairs that could be borrowed from a neighbor and returned before supper. There is nothing illegal about chairs. There is nothing illegal about cold cuts or coffee cake. The thing that hums beneath this day, is it a recipe or a delivery list? It is the human habit of gathering, and the way a gathering could tell the world more than the gathered intended. The road is neutral. The house is neutral. The sky has been neutral since the glaciers left. But attention is not neutral, and attention is on its way, wearing state plates and carrying notebooks. A gas station sits net far from the turn that leads to the house. It is the kind of place where a bell rings when tires cross a soft hose and a young man wipes his hands because that is what one does when customers arrive. He sells gum. He sells maps. He sells a brief conversation designed to leave everyone feeling as if nothing unusual has happened. On this day he notices that several men ask if there is a payphone. He notices that several cars smell faintly of city garages. He notices that nobody wants directions to the lake. Across the road, a small grocery lives its sensible life. The owner knows how to slice meat so that it folds instead of curls. He knows which bread survives a long ride in a trunk. He knows that mustard quiets down when it is kept near the back of the icebox. When a large order is placed, he does not ask why. He ties the packages with string and writes neat numbers on a pad. Numbers are his friends. They talk when people will not. The countryside, for its part, behaves with absolute good manners. The trees offer shade. The birds discuss seeds. The creek moves its mind from stone to stone. It is only the human traffic that begins to tap a different rhythm onto the surface of the day. A sedan pauses too long at a crossroads. Another car follows at a distance that would be polite if they were dancing. A third driver looks at a house and then looks away, as if trying not to disturb a sleeping dog. Every place has a natural volume. The city keeps its voice at a steady talk. The suburbs lower theirs to a neighborly tone. The countryside usually whispers. Today, the countryside whispers while people talk in the background, as if standing in a church vestibule. Someone coughs. Someone laughs at something that was only half a joke. Someone counts cars. The driveway to the house is long enough to be a sentence. It begins with a confident word, continues with commas made of gravel, and ends at a period the size of a motor court. On ordinary days it hosts deliveries of coal and milk and relatives with casseroles. Today it will host more than that. Today it will act as a guest book written in tire marks. There is a man who is worried. He is worried not about plates or coffee or the state of the hedges, but about the number of names that will be attached to this address if anyone starts asking. He has already given the lawn a haircut. He has already requested that the cook slice the meats thinner, because thin slices make conversation last longer. He has already cleared a room for coats. He worries that the road will gossip. He worries that the drive will repeat what it hears. Meanwhile, a trooper in a car the colour of state authority drives the same road he has always driven. He knows when the school bus will appear. He knows the farmer who waves with 2 fingers. He knows the good parking spot near the diner. Today he sees a cluster of cars that do not belong. He is not a detective by trade, but he is a detective by habit. He writes down a plate number because he makes a note that a certain make of car shows up twice in different colours. He buys coffee and says he prefers it black because that is easier for everyone involved. Back at the house, chairs arrive from a neighbour who is surprised and pleased to be helpful. The chairs are not fancy. They are chairs that have seen church basements and card games and the occasional birthday. They know how to sit quietly under large ideas. A folding table stands beside the window and pretends to be a table permanently. The cook lays out platters and thinks about timing rather than politics. Timing is the politics of kitchens. Phone lines carry whispers with the speed of birds. The calls are short, a date is confirmed, a direction is repeated twice, a reminder is given about hats and courtesy and not parking where you would embarrass the hydrangeas. Someone is late, someone else is early, someone has gotten lost in a way that proves they are from the city. The road conducts rehearsal after rehearsal of arrivals. A car slows, a car turns, a car does not. A man at the wheel pretends to admire the trees while waiting for the car behind him to pass. Another driver rehearses a story about why he is here at all. He is visiting a cousin. He is exploring the countryside. He is proving that his new tyres make no sound on gravel. These stories are useful. They are also made of tissue paper. What happens at the house will later be described in words like meeting and gathering and conference, each chosen by a different mouth for a different reason. But for now, there is only the choreography of shoes and the theatre of hats. Men step out of cars and look not at the house but at the horizon, as if to ask whether the sky approves. They shake hands in a way that is both greeting and inventory. They enter. The door swallows them politely. The trooper watches more cars pass the gas station than the gas station is designed to witness. He talks to the young man with the rag in his pocket. They share the language of weather and tyres. The trooper says he has seen unusual traffic. The young man says he has heard unusual accents. They do not get excited. They get curious. Curiosity is a steady tool when used with care. Out back, the lawn is practicing forgiveness. It forgives shoes. It forgives ashes that miss their tray. It forgives footprints that pretend they are footprints. A dog is encouraged to stay indoors to keep it from making new friends at the worst moment. The hedges, who have seen everything that can be seen in hedges, lean a little farther forward. The grocery finishes its work. The strings are tied. The pickles are secured in a way that respects both flavour and dignity. The owner wonders, as all owners do, whether anyone ever eats the parsley. He decides that parsley is an optimist that has earned its citizenship. Maps are folded and refolded until the creases become their own geography. Several drivers whisper the names of small towns to themselves, so they will sound as if they have always known how to pronounce them. A few of the cars wear plates from faraway states that do not visit often. They look like out-of-town cousins at a family reunion, charming and slightly overdressed. There is a rhythm to significant days that never feels significant while it is beating. It is the rhythm of coffee being poured twice. It is the rhythm of eyes checking the same clock. It is the rhythm of a doormat hosting more introductions than usual. The house listens. Houses always listen. Later the house will be asked to remember. For now, the house simply breathes. The trooper decides to look closer. He follows the road as it turns left and then right and then left again, the way a river follows rocks. He notes that the mailbox at the end of the lane has received an unusual number of respectful glances. He notes that no one seems to be stopping by accident. He notes that the drive is busy enough to pick up a dialect. No one has done anything yet that can be measured on a scale, but the scale has been taken out of the cupboard and placed on the table. The men inside talk about ordinary things in careful ways. The food is sliced thin. The coffee asks for more cups. The air inside the house is made of tobacco, aftershave, and quiet arithmetic. The air outside is made of leaves and the rumour of law. Every small town builds a scrapbook without calling it that. The scrapbook is kept in barber chairs and diner booths. It is kept in the hardware store where nails are sold one joke at a time. Today the scrapbook acquires a page titled Cars that do not usually arrive on Tuesdays. The page is illustrated with makes and colours and the way city shoes look when they step on country gravel. By mid-afternoon the road feels wise. It has counted more than it has been asked to count. It has learned that some tyres hum differently. It has learned that a certain car turns around at the same bend every hour. It has learned that attention can be measured in blinks. The road is not a witness in court. The road is a witness in weather. It knows what has passed and which direction it went. The man at the house who worries discovers that worry is a kind of weather. It can be prepared for, but not stopped. He checks the coats, he checks the platters, he checks the side gate that sticks unless you speak to it kindly. He cannot check the sky, so he pretends not to want to. Evening begins to practice at the edge of the fields. Shadows try on their longer lengths. Lamps rehearse their glow. The road is still busy, the grocery is washing its slicer and thinking about the two kinds of mustard. The gas station bell is tired but game. The trooper finishes his coffee and decides that a brief visit to a long driveway might be the kind of errand that clarifies a day. What happens next will belong to reports and headlines and the slow digestion of institutions, but for now the moment rests on a ledge between everyday and story. Cars continue to arrive, the house continues to host, the countryside maintains its politeness, the road keeps count, quietly grading the arithmetic of arrival against the arithmetic of belonging. If sleep takes you now, you will not miss the important part. The important part is that places remember. The mailbox remembers. The gravel remembers. The chairs remember the weight of certain jackets. The trooper remembers a plate number because he wrote it down and because writing is a form of memory with a handle on it. The house remembers the smell of cold cuts carried up a back step and the way voices switch to indoor speed as soon as a door closes. We will return after you rest to the coats, the driveway, and the way attention multiplies in small towns like birds taking the same thermal. For now, let the road return to being a road, a long sentence with no exclamation at the end, only a period the size of a driveway, and the promise of another paragraph tomorrow. There are houses that hold secrets in attics, and houses that hold secrets in cellars. This house keeps nothing except coats, not secrets disguised as coats or messages stitched into linings, just cloth that belongs to men who intended to stay for an hour and stayed for 2. The front room has been promoted for the day. It usually hosts card games at holidays and a radio with opinions. Today it hosts a wooden rack that looks like a fence brought indoors to rest. The rack takes a breath and expands as sleeves arrive. Cloth speaks a small language when it is lifted and set down. Tweed says I came from a city that admires itself in windows. Gabardine says rain is a rumour and I do not mind rumours. Wool says I would rather live on a ship but I will work on land. A cousin arrives early at the side door with folding hangers that squeak in a respectful way. The hangers behave like birds who have decided to be useful. Each one will carry a name in silence. No names are written. Names are not the subject today. Only order is the subject. Order asks for space for shoulders and hooks that do not pull at seam. On a small table by the door sits a bottle of furniture polish and a cloth that has seen many Saturdays. The cousin uses the cloth on the rack because shine is a way of asking wood to be brave. Brave wood accepts heavy cloth without deciding to pace something out loud. The cousin sets the bottle aside and checks the hooks twice. The hooks pass inspection like children who remembered to wash their hands. A hallway clock pronounces the time like a schoolteacher who no longer expects anyone to be surprised. Men arrive in pairs and singly. They practice being uninteresting on the porch and then stop practicing when the door opens. Inside, hats go to a shelf where they sit like a row of moons. Coats pass from shoulders to air to hanger in one long sentence. The cousin learns the weight of each man without meaning to. Some men carry weather in their lining. Some carry cities. One carries a faint memory of cigars that took their tie. In a separate room, chairs have been lined up for a rehearsal that is called a meeting. The chairs know they will be filled and then emptied in a different order. They accept this with the patience that chairs understand. A sideboard hosts plates that prefer not to clatter. The cook arranges platter after platter, as if laying out soft stepping stones across a stream. Between plates travel napkins that practice discretion. The coat room becomes a quiet ledger, no names, just entries made of cloth and weight, and the way some sleeves remember rain. The cousin can tell who has come in by sound alone. Some coats sigh when they arrive, as if they have been through a difficult stare. Some coats breathe in, relieved to spend an hour without weather. Some coats come in laughing. Coats know jokes even when men have stopped telling them out loud. A tray appears with a coffee service that has agreed to look important without making much noise. The cousin is allowed 1 cup and accepts it with ceremony. Coffee is a reward. It is a pace setter. The day takes its cue from the pour and from the small clink that does not echo. From the hall drift sentences that never quite finish. The cousin respects unfinished sentences. They keep the air light. On the porch a rug has been moved to persuade shoes to remember their manners. Shoes comply. They leave a quiet pattern of damp on the fibres and then forget about themselves. The cousin notices a pair that look as if they were polished by someone with patience and a borrowed cloth. He places them by the register so they will be warm later. Warm shoes make exits gentler. Coats begin to form neighbourhoods on the rack. There is a district of dark colours where serious men have left their weather. There is a lane of lighter cloth that tries to look cheerful without drawing attention. In the corner, a single pale coat waits like a visitor from another climate. The cousin considers moving it so it will not be lonely, then decides to let the coat learn to enjoy the company it has. A second rack arrives from the neighbour with the chairs. It is older and remembers a winter when everything smelled like coal. The older rack stands beside the new rack, the way an elder stands beside a younger cousin at a wedding. They share a job without deciding whose way is best. The older rack accepts hats that prefer high shelves. The younger rack takes the long coats that like to dream. The coat room now has its own weather. It is made of wool and conversation that has jumped off cuffs. It is made of cologne that thinks of cities and of tobacco that will be mentioned politely but not scolded. The air has a soft weight that suggests a train station just before a departure. The cousin opens the window the width of a line in a book, and the room says thank you without say thank you. Down the hall a man clears his throat in a way that means the room has agreed on a subject. The cousin has no interest in subjects. The cousin is waiting for the moment when someone will ask for a coat, long before it is time to go. That will be a signal of something, not danger, not drama, just a turn in the day. The cousin listens with the attention of a librarian who knows which books wander off in spring. A small problem appears. A hanger with a stubborn opinion refuses to turn the right way. The cousin persuades it with a drop of oil from a bottle that should have been thrown away years ago, and is therefore perfect. The hanger learns humility. The coat settles as if it has remembered that gravity is a friend. More arrivals. The house has a polite echo now. The echo steps into the coat room last, and leaves first, too shy to be seen elsewhere. An older man hands off his coat, with a nod that includes 3 decades. The cousin answers with a nod that returns the favour. No words. Coats prefer silence. Words are for rooms where the plates live. In that room, the cook is polishing the idea of abundance so that it looks like courtesy rather than show. Cold meats glisten in the light that remembers soap. Bread is stacked like low hills. Pickles align themselves like citizens waiting to sign forms. The coffee reheats itself with the dignity of a train that keeps exact time. Back in the coat room, the cousin discovers that the rack is a kind of map. One section says men from one city who prefer to stand near windows. Another says men from a different city who prefer doors. There is a small peninsula of coats that belong to men who travel with their own quiet. The cousin makes a mental note that maps are often made without paper. A light knock at the side door. A delivery of extra ashtrays and a box of matches that would like to be introduced to pockets. The cousin adds the ashtrays to a tray and places the matches where hands will find them without looking. Hands that do not have to look grow calmer. Calm is an unlisted ingredient in every successful day. Through the window, the driveway shows a pattern. Cars arrive and leave in a rhythm that imitates breathing. In and out. In and out. No one stays forever. The cousin approves of this because forever is hard on racks. Forever stretches shoulders and teaches wire to forget its manners. Somewhere, a trooper sips coffee that has forgotten its milk. He thinks about plates, and about the fact that good weather encourages journeys that otherwise remain ideas. He doesn't hurry. Hurrying is for people who believe that scenes can be stopped by arriving faster. The trooper believes that scenes stop when they are ready, and not before. Inside the house, the cousin faces the first test of the day. 2 coats on similar hangers have decided to whisper to each other when they should be standing still. The cousin separates them the way a schoolteacher separates cousins who enjoy one another too much. The room regains its posture. The cousin writes a line in the private air of the coat room. Good order is a form of kindness. A man appears who does not usually surrender his coat. He does so now. This means something. The cousin does not know what. The cousin knows only that the coat has surrendered a map of its city to the rack, and that city will now be part of the air for a while. In the kitchen, the cook instructs the mustard to behave. Mustard behaves when it is respected and not shaken for sport. Bread is sliced thinner because thin slices make a conversation last longer. The cousin approves, though no one asked for approval. By early afternoon, the rack looks like a choir that has learned its notes. Dark next to light, wool next to wool that used to be a different wool in a different shop. An odd hat asks for a shelf that does not exist. The cousin invents one with a box turned sideways and a cloth laid over the top, coats and share, hats like their own square of sky. A small boy from next door appears with a stack of chairs he insists he can carry. He can carry them. He is offered a cookie that believes it is breakfast. He withdraws with the speed of a quiet success. The chairs replace 2 that would have complained later. Even furniture enjoys rotation. There is a moment when the house holds more coats than at any Ive since winter was a larger thing. The cousin marks this without marking it. The air seems to bow under the extra cloth. Even the hooks look proud, and pride is a dangerous mood for hooks. The cousin compliments the hooks in silence, so that pride will settle into steadiness. Outside, the sky has learned a shade of grey that tells truth gently. The driveway adds a new pattern of parking that keeps the noses of cars from arguing. The road further away continues its bookkeeping of arrivals and departures. If roads wrote memoranda, this one would write, "There has been unusual but orderly business today, and I remain a road." In the other room, voices lift and fall like a well-behaved tide. Someone clears a throat and the tide drops. Footsteps cross to the sideboard, a chair complains and is forgiven. The cousin begins to learn the timing of this tide and uses it to schedule small tasks. Fresh hangers are placed where they will be needed. A brush is returned to its tin. A window is closed the width of a finger so that warmth will not forget its appointment with the coats. The first request for an early coat arrives. A man steps in with the look of someone who has remembered a train. The cousin returns the coat with a nod that says trains must always be respected even if no one has purchased a ticket. The man thanks the cousin by not using words. He leaves. The door returns to its hinges. The tide in the other room adjusts by a quarter inch. Another request. This one for a hat only. The cousin fetches it from the elder rack where hats like to be older than they are. The man sets the hat on his knee for a while and then hands it back. The hat has finished thinking and is ready to be a hat again. The cousin approves. Late afternoon folds itself into the house like a blanket that knows where everything belongs. Some coats already carry new scents. Coffee that lived in the air. Smoke that learned manners. A trace of outside where the grass insisted on remembering shoes. The cousin understands that coats are reporters who file without bylines. The phone rings somewhere and stops. Rings again and stops. A pattern that has meaning to someone who cares about patterns. The cousin has one job only. Keep the coats from becoming a puzzle. The cousin performs the job by making small changes that feel like weather. A hanger turned, a sleeve straightened, a button shown its proper hole. Weather that helps. Dusk begins to write in the windows with a pencil that does not need to be sharpened. Lamps answer in a language of circles. The rack looks almost beautiful now, which is not its aim. The aim of a rack is to keep the room from learning too much about the men who used the door. The cousin thanks the rack for choosing usefulness over beauty, and then admits that beauty does not always cause trouble when it happens by accident. Soon there will be a trooper at the foot of the drive. Soon there will be questions that do not fit neatly onto hangers. But the cousin does not live in the future. The cousin lives in a room where cloth is briefly at rest. The cousin continues to take care of cloth, and of the quiet geometry that keeps cloth from becoming a rumour. When the time comes for men to leave in groups that wish to seem like singles, the coat room performs its last ritual. Sleeves find arms, collars sit properly, hats approve of the angle of evening. The cousin receives a few nods that include 3 decades and a few that include only today. The racks empty like shelves after a holiday. The air lightens. The window closes the width of a line in a book. The cousin writes one sentence in the internal book that all careful people keep. A house with too many coats is a house that will remember. Then the cousin erases the sentence, because careful people do not keep sentences in rooms where other people have been storing weather. What remains is polish on wood and a rack that has learned a new capacity. If you have drifted away from this room, that is correct. If you are still here, watch the cousin carry the last hanger back to its drawer. Hear the clock pronounce a tie, but is it a verdict or a marker? Smell the coat air turning back into house air. Somewhere down the drive a car starts in the thoughtful way that cars start when they are not in a hurry to be seen. The house breathes and keeps breathing. The coat room rests like a page that has been read and placed back on the pile. In the kitchen, the arithmetic of appetite begins before anyone lifts a knife. The table has been measured in quiet inches and then measured again by eye. Platters are chosen for their ability to look both generous and modest. The icebox hums the way contented furniture hums when it forgets to tea furniture. On a chair sits a stack of folded towels that will become a kind of uniform for the work. Cold meat does not argue. It lies down and waits for a plan. Ham suggests a shine that means respect. Turkey practices being pale. Salami carries its own punctuation and asks only that the blade be confident. The cook picks up the slicer and tests the first pass on a corner that will never be missed. Thin enough to be polite, thick enough to make a plate feel steady. The blade agrees. The order had been placed earlier in the day at the small grocery by the crossroads. The owner wrapped each item as if it had written a letter that deserved a reply. He tied string the way a sailor ties quiet. He selected bread that knows how to wait for butter without sulking. He chose mustard that minds its manners. All of it arrived in boxes that didn't brag about what they carried. Boxes are good at discretion when you teach them how. A second table is give over to assembly. Bread becomes measured geography. A line of plates waits as if at a train station. The cook moves down the line with a precision that lives somewhere between habit and music. Fold the slice so it says welcome. Set a second slice so it echoes the first. A third if the plate looks lonely. A triangle of cheese that nods. A dot of relish that seems to have an opinion about daylight. There is an inventory of knives. Each has a personality that was not advertised in the catalogue. One prefers ham and is indifferent to beef. Another tolerates cheese but does not wish to cut bread. The long blade that thinks it is French cuts everything with a sense of ceremony that tires the wrist. The cook gives it a job far from the centre of the table, where it can feel proud without slowing the day. Calculations travel in circles between kitchen and dining room and back again. How many men? How many plates per hour? How long to refill the coffee urn? How often to check the ice around the trays? The cousin from the coat room appears at the door with a quiet face that asks, "Do you require a second pair of hands?" The cook nods without making a sentence. A towel is folded and passed as if it were a baton that keeps rhythm. The refrigerator is large, but it is faithful. Its shelves are arranged like a well-kept map. Top shelf for dairy so it to talk to itself. Second shelf for meat so it will not brag to anyone else. Bottom for the bottles that prefer not to be discussed. The cook opens the door and the light performs its small theatre. A quick count. Enough for now, enough for the hour after that if men remember they have homes and do not pretend to live here. There is also a ledger on a small side counter. Not names, never names, only numbers and the meaning of numbers. Today 15 to 20 plates to be present at once. 4 trays in reserve, 1 more loaf than seems necessary, because bread is a comfort, and comfort vanishes first. The pencil writes in a clear hand that looks like laws that would make sense if anyone read them. The total at the bottom does not matter. What matters is the feeling that the total is listening. Coffee has its own management. The urn behaves like an elder who has seen winters. It wants respect and a stable surface. The cook feeds it 1 scoop for each cup and 1 for the house. The house likes coffee even when it does its drink any. A second urn waits like a reserve regiment in a room that once held quilts. The cousin tests the spigot and nods. The stream is steady. Steadiness is victory in liquid form. Cold cuts require climate. The air near the platters must be cooler than the air near the stove. Windows are adjusted the width of a thumb. A towel under each tray stands guard against moisture creeping out where it could smudge dignity. Ice is wrapped in cloth so it will perspire politely. A fan in the corner makes a breeze that no one will notice but the meats will thank kindly. The cook walks the table with the eyes of a child counting marbles. Nothing is scarce, nothing is foolishly abundant. A jar of pickles is opened with the care one brings to a letter from a friend, who writes seldom but writes well. The brine says patience. The cook answers, patience will be rewarded when a plate needs courage. On a back step a delivery boy waits without waiting. He knows the routine of houses that raise their voice by inviting many people to speak softly inside. He holds a crate that smells of provolone and something from the deli that travels in round tins. He accepts the coins with a nod and slips away on a bicycle that believes in purpose. The wheels whisper that everything important tonight will be done without hurry. The phone interrupts to ask a small question about cups, stoneware or paper. The cook says both and means neither are perfect, but both will serve the mood of the hour that will need them. Paper means speed, stoneware means a weight that calms hands. Each will be right at a different minute. The cousin makes a note that does not look like a note. From the other rooms come the murmurs of decisions that do not want to be seen. A chair moves, a throat clears. The cook hears everything and turns the sound into portion sizes. A bigger crowd needs smaller triangles. A smaller crowd needs one more slice to keep conversation from feeling like thrift. The knife obeys the math of voices. At some point the cook pulls out a list titled, "Mistakes we will not repeat. Do not stack the bread too high, or the top pieces dry their edges and look like paper. Do not place the mustard near men who like to tell stories with their hands. Do not trust the long spoon to remain in the pickle jar when the jar is bored." The list ends with the kindness everyone forgets. Always carry a plate to the man who will not leave his post to fetch one. Temperatures are watched with the seriousness usually reserved for debates. The ham tells the room it prefers cool. The turkey asks for a drape of cloth as a shawl. The cheese takes a walk to the windowsill where the breeze is a friend. The cook listens for the faint complaint that signals a platter has grown tepid. The cousin replaces the ice under that platter without announcing a rescue. The arithmetic of men is less simple. A group enters and eats as if they have discovered hunger recently. A second group appears and carries plates into a corner where sentences arrange themselves with care. The first group returns for bread. That is it, another meal, but another chance to use their hands. Bread is a tool for calm. The cook cuts more. A small dispute breaks out between two spoons. The serving spoon for slaw has wandered into the bowl for olives. The olive spoon has ended up in the slaw with a look of confusion. The cook restores them to their home states. The bowls think about this and become bowls again. The room seems grateful. Order in small things teaches large things to behave. There is a quiet superstition in the kitchen. Always keep one plate untouched and perfect near the end of the table. Not for a special guest, not for a photograph, for the morale of the food. Food that sees a perfect example, remembers why it is here, and doesn't fall apart. The cook keeps the superstition because it works, and because it is gentle. Outside the drive composes another stanza. The trooper slows at the edge of the property and looks up the lane as if asking the map for permission. The kitchen does not know this yet. The kitchen only knows that a platter of turkey now looks like a field after harvest and must be replanted with care. Thin slices, agreeable folds. The landscape becomes generous again. The cousin brings news that sounds like weather. More people than expected may want coffee at once. The cook sets the reserve urn in motion and speaks softly to the flame. No boiling, no sulk. A steady patience that will pour without scandal. The smell finds the hallway and recruits allies. Coffee is the quiet sheriff of tense afternoons. In a corner sits a tray of sweets that have been told to be humble. Cookies that break neatly, cake that does not shout sugar, a bowl of fruit that prefers to be seen last. The cook moves them farther back on the table so that meat and bread can do their duty first. In the world of food, as in the world of men, the order of arrival has opinions. The cook listens to those opinions and then behaves like the adult in the room. A guest slips into the kitchen with a question that is it a question? Is there more of that salami? His voice pretends to be about taste. It is about nerves. The cook hands him a slice on a small plate and says, "Of course." He eats the slice like a person who has just confirmed that gravity still works. He nods to the air and vanishes. The plate returns a minute later as if it had taken itself for a walk. Another guest asks for water and receives it with a gratitude that puts a shine on the glass. Water is the quietest thing that can cross a doorway. It carries messages back from throats to minds that would like to slow down. The cook adds a tray of tumblers to the sideboard and writes one more line in the ledger. Water matters. There is a brief rehearsal for the moment when the kitchen must move quickly. The cousin counts the distance from icebox to table and clears a path with one hand. The cook rearranges knives so the right blade will be in the right hand at the right second. The towels are unfolded and draped across the arm of the world. They look like flags of a country that has decided peace is the only useful policy. Then the rehearsal becomes the moment. The tide in the other rooms lifts. Men stand and break the surface for plates. The kitchen breathes in and gives away its air in the form of food. Platters go out and return in the shape of requests. More ham, more bread, another jar of pickles. Yes to olives but no spills. Coffee here, and do you have sugar that behaves? The kitchen answers without speeches. In the midst of all this, the cook remembers to eat. A small plate tucked on a side chair becomes a private treaty. 2 slices, a corner of cheese, 1 pickle to keep the eyes level. The cousin pretends not to notice and thus honours the treaty. Work that feeds others must not outrun its own breath. As the hour softens, the arithmetic changes. Now the job is to clear without announcing that clearing is happening. A platter that looks tired is sent to the sink the way a veteran is sent to a chair. Saucepans are washed in a rhythm that does not complain. Towels trade places. The ledger receives the last numbers of the day and hides them in modest ink. The kitchen will remember this day in fingerprints on jars that were wiped twice and once more for luck. It will remember the slice that tried to fall and was caught by a plate that believes in service. It will remember the way coffee behaved when asked to be both present and invisible. It will remember how numbers to be kind when they are used to keep people from being hungry at the same time. Somewhere nearby, the trooper makes a choice that will be written down later by other hands. In the kitchen, the only decision left is how many plates to leave within reach in case a final wave arrives after the tide has gone out. The cook leaves 3. 3 is the number that tells a room it may rest, but not sleep yet. When night settles its coat across the windows, the kitchen becomes a harbour for cooling trays. The icebox closes with the satisfied sound of a good box doing a good job. The towels go to their hooks like workers who are glad to be off their feet. The cousin carries the ledger back to its drawer and lets the drawer shut with a whisper that sounds like tomorrow. If you are drifting, let the room set your course. The last coffee stands at ease, the last knife dries against a folded towel, plates stack in neat towers that will not bother the dark, and on the table a single perfect plate remains as a courtesy to the idea that someone might still be hungry. The house nods to that courtesy, and then closes its eyes for a minute, while the day considers what to do next. A driveway is a polite declaration. It says stop here and consider your next sentence. It says you are a guest or you are lost, and both situations deserve good manners. On ordinary days in the country, a driveway is a small story about deliveries and cousins and quiet arrivals that do not require headlights. On this particular day, the driveway becomes a ledger that writes in tire marks and timing. Gravel has a memory. When a car turns in from the road, the stones begin their choir of small clicks. The sound is a greeting if you belong and a question if you do not. The top layer of gravel drifts a little to either side, make feathered edges like a page turned by wind. Along those edges, thin weeds make notes in green pencil. When many cars pass within the same hour, the weeds press themselves flatter than usual, a modest bow to unexpected traffic. At the mouth of the lane, the mailbox keeps its profession. It offers a lid. It offers a flag that has learned that to get excited. It learns the new trick of being studied by people who would not normally study mailboxes. A man looks at it as if it might introduce him to the house. Another man looks away too quickly, as if he has been told to let mailboxes keep their privacy. The mailbox holds firm. It is on duty for envelopes only. It does not provide transit maps. Halfway up the lane there is a low branch that has been trimmed many times. It knows the height of farm trucks and of milk vans. Today it learns the height of cars from cities that prefer canyons of brick. The branch does not complain. It shakes a few leaves into the air and lets the air return them to the hedges. This is how the lane takes attendance without calling any names. Close to the house the gravel widens into a space where a family reunion could be staged if the family enjoyed talking in gentle circles. The stones here are older and flatter. They have seen winters that asked for work. They have seen springs that forgot mud for a week and then remembered. Today they accept a pattern of arrivals that could be a dance, if anyone admitted that men in good shoes sometimes dance with caution when the floor is made of pebbles. License plates belong to states the way birds belong to skies. Each has its own arrangement of letters and numbers. The trooper, who is in a hurry but is in possession of a notebook, reads plates with the patience of a librarian. In the lot by the gas station he writes down a plate from a far city and another from a state that rarely visits. He writes the make of a car that has cousins. He notes a colour that refuses to blend with bark and hedges. The notes are simple: plate, state, colour, arrives, leaves, returns. The notebook forms its own quiet road. A delivery boy on a bicycle becomes a nicer without wanting to be. He has made this lane many times, usually bringing eggs or a paper sack filled with items that promise sandwiches and then keep their promises. Today he sees cars he has not seen before. He watches faces for a fraction of a second the way birds watch seeds. He counts hats. He looks away. He tells himself he is counting exercise. He pedals as if the hill had learned to be shorter for once. On the far side of the property a neighbour peers through kitchen curtains. Not a spy. A farmer of gossip in a county where gossip is less salt and more weather report. She considers the driveway with the same calm she applies to cloud ceilings. In her mind she draws a small chart. If the cars are this many and the plates are from there, and those men are not taking fishing rods out of trunks, then perhaps there is a meeting about taxes or rail schedules. She never writes the word conspiracy. She writes the word busy and underlines it with a spoon. Gravel becomes a watch. Early cars set a pattern. Later cars confirm it. The rhythm is steady with small improvisations. A pause longer than comfort at the lane entrance means the driver is consulting a map in his head that was drawn by voices. A cautious acceleration means the driver has decided not to be interesting. A small spray of stones after a sharp turn means a driver from a city where streets are level and patience is measured in horns rather than in geese. Tire marks and narrow sentences written on a tough page. The cousin from the coat room steps outside for air and notices their grammar. Some lines are neat as copybooks. Others wobble at the place where the lane meets the circle near the porch. One set of tracks begins and then changes its mind and becomes another track, a correction without an eraser. The cousin is not a trooper and not a reporter. The cousin is a person who has learned that even gravel says what it tear. A blue sedan stops at the foot of the drive, as if asked of permission from the hedges. The trooper watches from his car. He doesn't act. He lets the scene write its own sentence. The blue sedan finally turns in and proceeds at a speed that would please an elderly aunt. In the rear window a hat shape shifts as its owner turns to look behind. There is no chase. There is only a record kept by stones and by one man who writes with a pencil that never hurries. Across the road, the gas station bell rings too often for a weekday. The young attendant learns each car by sound. A long engine with a quiet throat, a short engine eager to go up hills, a carefully tuned engine that expresses itself like a singer asked to sing softly. The attendant wipes the same rag along the same arc of fender, even when there is no dust. The rag is an instrument of time. When it stops, something unusual has happened. Today it does not stop. License plates talk to each other when parked close. They hold their different alphabets like handshakes. One plate has a color that makes the others feel rustic. Another has a number sequence that looks like an address. None of this is meaningful to the driveway. Stones are stones. But to the collector of details, the plates are wreaths on doors telling where those doors go when they go home. The trooper collects without comment. The hedges are amiable, but they are not foolish. They lean forward and back like a chorus deciding when to enter. At certain moments, a hedge could be a wall. At other moments, it could be a friend that tells you who is coming before the road has decided to admit it. Today, the hedges offer the sound of rubber consulting gravel. They offer the adjustment of a muffler as a car settles into a decision. They offer, once or twice, the sound of a door shutting with the care that men bring to doors when they hope the door will not tell on them. Driveways, like rivers, make deltas. There are small offshoots at the edges where cars that should have parked close to the house decide to rest in the shade instead. These refuges collect tire signs the way pockets collect lint. At dusk they will resemble small grey ponds. In winter they will hide under snow and wait for spring to explain them. Today they speak quietly to anyone who walks slowly enough to read. The house is aware. Houses notice in their own way. Floorboards keep track of steps and their weights. Hinges collect the volume of entrances and exits, the way a jar collects coins. Windows store reflections and give them back when light asks for a favor. From its front room, the house watches cars settle, watches hats appear, watches the same coats that visited the rack earlier return to their owners for a minute and then surrender again. The house is patient. It understands that the day is longer than a nap. A note about hats, since hats are Rotis's too. A felt hat on a back seat means its owner wanted to arrive inconspicuously and will take a moment to gather his preferred self before appearing at the door. A hat on a head that doesn't look around means its owner has rehearsed this entrance. A hat carried in hand like a passport means the man has met a trooper before and learned a certain politeness. None of this is illegal. It is choreography. The trooper decides to drive past the house as if the house were part of the road and not the other way around. He notes that some cars have aligned in a pattern that implies they discussed it without talking. Noses outward for quick departures, gaps wide enough for a polite escape that does not scratch paint. A single car parked foolishly at an angle reveals a man who is thinking about a different puzzle. The trooper does not know that man. He writes the plate and the color in the book and continues. The wind shifts. When wind shifts in late autumn, it carries a basket of smells at several levels. Near the ground, it brings leaves that have decided to be citizens of soil. Above knees, it brings bread from the kitchen. At shoulder height, it brings tobacco that regrets its showmanship. Above heads, it brings cool river water that forgot to announce itself because rivers do not announce. The wind is a ticitor, but not a gossip. It does not keep secrets or share them. It simply moves them from room to room. In the lane, a cat takes up her office. Cats possessed of driveways believe they are customs officials. This one sits where gravel meets grass. She watches shoes. She approves of soft steps. She distrusts heels that punctuate. She chooses one car to nap beneath, as if to say that car has passed inspection. Men unfamiliar with cats adjust their stride without understanding why. Men familiar with cats nod as if she were wearing a badge. A small complication arrives in the form of a delivery truck that missed its morning appointment and has come now full of resolve and turnips. The driver opens his mouth to apologize to the driveway for being large. The driveway replies with an extra chorus of stones. Cars shift to make room. The truck moves through like a modest parade that didn't ask for a band. Later a rumour will say someone tried to smug a turnip through a meeting. The rumour will be mistaken and will still be good company at the diner. People who live near country lanes know that light is a superintendent of behaviour. When the sun lowers itself toward the edge of the fields, the lane grows cautious. Shadows report to duty in crisp uniforms. Headlamps consider their agreements with dusk. The first car that decides to use cat eyes too early is always from a city. The lane forgives this and returns to counting. Counting has a way of gathering friends. At the gas station, the young attendant discovers that the bell chime repeats like a song he cannot forget. At the grocery, the owner makes a mark in his mind each time a sedan takes the hill without slowing. The neighbour, putting dinner into the oven, counts plates and imagines which recipe would serve the largest number of considerable men. The trooper counts plates of a different kind and waits to see which number will be the first to ask for more digits. There is a point in every day when attention stops being an accident and becomes a place. The driveway reaches that point as dusk finds the hedges. The house has too many coats, and the kitchen has done its generous arithmetic, and the road has carried more hats than a parade of respectable barbers. The driveway is now a temporary address in a larger conversation. Its stones hum with the electricity of being useful to a story. No one plans to be seen, they plan only to be here, but cars are billboards even when their paint is a modest shade. Tires are announcers even when their pressure is proper. A license plate is a lapel pin that never forgets where it came from. The driveway collates these documents without speaking them aloud. The trooper translates without raising his voice. A pattern emerges, the way quilts emerge from small squares that didn't know they were part of a larger warmth. At the end of the lane near the porch there is a patch where grass tries to reclaim gravel each summer. It has been trimmed back into negotiations many times. Today it receives a small tire kiss from a cautious car. That dark crescent will remain for days, a punctuation mark announcing that on one afternoon the sentence of this driveway tried on a new clause. The cat will sit near that mark for a week and approve of its shape. The cousin from the coat room returns to the doorway with a tray balanced like a promise. He studies the cars with the affection that careful people develop for the tools of order. He notes the spaces left between bumpers as evidence of a shared plan. He reminds himself that shared plans are often the soft architecture of polite days. He returns inside with the tray and the memory of tires speaking fluent gravel. The trooper turns his car around, with the gravity required by public employment, and parks where he can see the mouth of the lane and the shoulder of the road. He finishes a coffee that has learned to be simple. He considers calling a colleague and decides that another minute of watching will write a better sentence. He is not a hunter. He is a reader of scenes that have chosen to publish themselves. In town, a barber sweeps hair into a pile the size of a current event and says to his last customer that the roads were busy for a weekday. The customer, who never says more than 3 words when 2 will do, says the name of the county and the word traffic and the word unusual. They agree that the diner will know more soon because dinners learn before newspapers do. They put their coats on and go home because dinner deserves to be ready when asked. Back at the house, the driveway takes a breath. Cars have paused. Cars will unpause. Time has become a string that everyone holds, each at a different knot. The kitchen monitors the coffee that supervises nerves. The coat room prepares for brief departures that look like errands, but are actually rehearsals for other departures. The hedges decide they have bent enough and resume the dignity that shrubs prefer. It is nearly dark when the driveway acts like a stage that dimmed its lights for an intermission. In the wings of the yard, men stand for air. They speak sentences that begin with the weather and end with the weather, and hold in between the geography of cities that would rather not appear on maps this evening. Shoes scuff the gentle dirt as if they were taking notes for a pair of boots that could not make the trip. The trooper raises his notebook and writes a final line for now. He closes the book with the quiet confidence of a door that knows it will be asked to open again before long. He sets the notebook on the seat beside him, the way a man sets a loaf of bread beside a bowl of soup. A simple pairing. The road continues to carry its own minutes toward the next corner where something else will ask to be noticed. A last car arrives from far down the county road. It pauses in the posture of courtesy, then turns in and follows the grammar written by the cars ahead of it. The driveway recognizes it as the final punctuation needed before the evening adjusts to its next chapter. Full stop, new paragraph. Lamps at the house glow with the modest courage of domestic electricity. What a driveway learns on a day like that will never make it into law, but it will be stamped into memory the way a heel stamps a small shape into dirt that keeps the shape longer than anyone expects. The gravel will shift tonight when the tires leave. The hedges will relax. The mailbox will remember glances. The cat will sleep under the car she chose. In the notebook a page will cool like pie on a sill. Tomorrow the road crews will go about their tasks, and farmers will discuss weather, and the grocery will receive a shipment of pickles that believe in order. If you are drifting, you may let the hum of tires on distant pavement fold into the sound of quiet in your room. If you are awake, you may look down from a friendly window and notice that driveways are not merely entries. They are instruments that play the tempo of a day. Today, this one kept tie until attention arrived with a badge and a notebook. It will keep pine again when the house has returned to coats that belong only to relatives and a dog that remembers which car is home. On the far side of the hill, a phone begins to ring toward the next scene. The driveway hears nothing now. It is gravel again. It is stones at rest under stars that have made no appointments. It is a place that has done its work and prefers to be praised by being allowed to forget. Weather is the quiet clerk that writes everything down without being asked. It files a report on leaves and hats, and the way a road sounds when tires practice caution. Today it has been taking notes since dawn, and now it begins to read them aloud in the language of air. The sky arrived this morning with a grey that means honest business, not the angry grey that wants to be noticed. The clerk's grey, a grey that says, I will be even. I will be present. I will not choose favourites. Men who know country afternoons glance at that colour and nod as if the sky has brought the right tools to the job. There is a breeze that behaves like a librarian. It moves through hedges and reminds them to keep their voices low. It turns pages in the trees with a soft hand. It carries the smell of fields that are finished for the year and of water deciding whether to be a rumour or a conversation. It keeps the temperature just this side of polite. Coats remain on hooks until men remember who they are supposed to be and ask for sleeves. The gravel is cooler than it looks. It holds yesterday in its stones the way a drawer holds old receipts. When cars arrive, the first tire tells the gravel to wake up, and the gravel does so with good manners. The small clicks are lower in pitch than last week. The breeze explains in its report that dry has become almost damp, and the music of stones has chosen a deeper note. Clouds pass over the road in formations that used to mean something to sailors. Long, low pieces move from west to east, as if they are learning to write their names in a new script. The road accepts their shade and returns it to the fields with gratitude. Shade helps the day agree with itself. Men arriving from the city do not notice this lesson, but their shoulders do. Shoulders relax when shade keeps its promises. On the porch, a rug that was carried out for shoes decides that today it will imitate a tide chart, damp at the edges, dry in the middle. It receives footprints that rehearse for the return trip. A house reads this as weather and not as identity. Weather leaves impressions and then excuses them. Identity tries to make those impressions permanent. The house prefers weather. There is a metal pail under the eave that measures rain by inheriting it. The pail reports a small amount collected overnight from a sky that changed its mind. The cook looks at the pail on the way to the back door and decides to keep a cloth over the sliced meats a little longer. Weather makes kitchen policy in 100 tiny ways that never make it into speeches. The wind talks to the flag on the mailbox. Not a loud conversation, a discussion in nods. The flag tilts and rests, tilts again and rests. The wind tries to learn the shape of the afternoon and discovers that it will be steady. Steady is good for traffic that wishes not to become drama. Steady lets men pretend they are just passing through, even when their shoes say they yearn to stay. In the field beyond the hedges, the grass holds its own meeting about frost. It agrees to wait a week if the river will behave and the stars will keep a respectful distance. The breeze writes this down without promising anything. Breezes do not make promises. They take dictation and keep moving. The trooper reads weather with the same patience he gives to license plates. He tastes the air outside the diner and finds a hint of lake in it. His coffee cools a little faster than usual. He adjusts his coat by one button. He tells his notebook that dusk will come 10 minutes earlier than yesterday, even though the clock will disagree. He makes a note that headlamps will look nervous against a sky that never meant to be dramatic and will accidentally become a stage. A delivery boy feels weather in his hands. The bicycle grips its handlebar tape with the mood of the air. When a cross breeze pushes the front wheel by a finger width, he knows that later, a hat will lift itself off a head that thought it was secure. He will catch that hat, because he will be there. He will be there because weather likes to place people where catching is required. At the gas station, the bell hose under the tires becomes a barometer. It squeaks when cold arrives, it sighs when warm returns. Today it hisses, and then decides to be quiet. The young attendant looks up at a sky that refuses drama and decides to leave the windows half open. Half open is agreement between weather and glass. The house has a relationship with its chimneys. They speak when the air leans one way or the other. Today the chimneys murmur and the rooms understand that smoke will travel where it should travel. That means coffee can be brewed and carried without the odour of something that tried to leave and could not. The kitchen nods to the chimneys and returns to its arithmetic of plates and cups. A small flock of birds rides the corridor above the lane. Birds do not write reports. Birds are the report. They change formation at the exact second the air changes mind. They land when the day decides it has a lap. They rise when the day sits up again. The lane finally meets their shadow and thinks for a moment it might be rain. It is not rain. The lane accepts the correction without mood. There are puddles in the low places that did not expect to hold puddles today. They are not dramatic. They are the size of saucers, and their edges wear the shallow lace that wind makes when it is in a hurry. A single leaf studies a puddle like a mirror and chooses to float. Later, a shoe will step there and leave a small comet of water behind. The comet will dry before anyone decides to assign it meaning. Weather provides these gentle accidents, so that men to practice not inventing stories. Inside the house a window is opened, the width of a pencil line. This is the window in the coat room, and the pencil line is the measurement of good judgment, enough air to keep wool from being confused by other wool, not so much air that collars think of leaving. The cousin understands that weather is a guest who must be given just the right chair. On the road a leaf crosses in front of the trooper, at a speed that looks deliberate, and is it. It is carried by a rule that has nothing to do with laws or with meetings. It is carried by the design of the day. The trooper watches it travel and lets his foot stay where it is. Later he will remember that leaf, because it will be easier to remember than the exact order of cars. Memory likes props. Weather provides them. Along the hedges, a change of temperature alters the behavior of breath. Men who step out for air see their words for the first time. The vapor is thin and impatient, but it exists. Men who have spent most of their year in cities watch their own breath with the interest one gives a telegram from a cousin. Men who live here nod and say yes, that is about right for this type of day. The air carries sound at a setting that makes distances behave. On some days you can hear a hammer at a barn a mile away. On some days you cannot hear a cough from 10 feet. Today is a middle day. The trooper can hear the gas station bell if a car is heavy. The cousin to hear a chair leg click 2 rooms away. The cook can hear the ice settling in the bowl under the ham. The weather file includes these entries as evidence that the afternoon is conducting itself decently. On the river, a skin of shine slides along the current. It is his sunlight exactly. It is the day telling the river that it approves. Boats that rarely pass today do it pass at all. This gives the river a chance to keep its own counsel. Rivers do not need silence, but they appreciate being allowed to choose their words. A telephone wire runs from pole to pole like a clothesline where messages are hung to dry. When wind changes the pitch of that wire, the town understands that someone somewhere will hear from someone else a little sooner or a little later than expected. Today the wire hums a single note that promises the schedule will hold. Schedules built on that note trust their legs. By mid-afternoon the sky writes its signature along the western edge, not a flourish. The kind of signature a careful person uses on a check at the hardware store. The light turns patient. Faces look more honest by accident. The driveway accepts this improvement, and men who are about to become nervous decide to remain patient for 10 minutes. 10 minutes is an empire in the life of a gathering. Weather gifts it without a bill. Then the report includes a paragraph about the smell of meat and of coffee, and how those smells travel through screens and over hedges, and into the memory of a trooper who grew up near a church that held suppers in a basement. He does not think of the church. He thinks of the basement. He thinks of metal chairs unfolding. Weather likes to cross-reference entries. It files this under memory assistance. Shadows lengthen and become ropes laid across the yard. People step over them without noticing they are stepping over time. The cat who manages the customs office of the lane changes her post by a few feet to keep one paw in sun and one in shade. The air cools enough to make the world smell like iron for a minute. Someone turning a key will enjoy that smell without being able to name it. A light mist arrives as if auditioning for the role of rain. It fails to earn the part and is grateful. It simply helps surfaces remember to be careful. The porch rail learns a new slickness. The front steps ask for the heel to be set down with care. The mist rinses the dust from the leaves of the hedge and gives them back their quiet shine. The trooper adds a final weather line to his page. Evening will be clean. Road will be honest. Wind will keep secrets. He closes the book and rests the pencil on top like a small baton. The world does not take a cue. The world was already in Tive. Weather had been conducting all along. At the gas station, the young attendant turns the crank on the window shade. Night will be wearing an old coat this evening. Not cold enough to chisel faces, cool enough to put a thought in every pocket. He thinks the word crisp and decides he admires it. He counts 2 cars passing that he has not seen before. The bell notes them and files them in the place bells keep their facts. In town, a barber opens his back door to sweep the hair of the day into the alley where wind will take it to a place that believes in mulch. He listens to the air as it moves around brick corners. He hears nothing that argues. He closes the door and locks it with the same motion he has used for 10 years. Weather taught him that motion. It is the motion that means enough, and also tomorrow. The house chooses lamps. Some grow brighter by a notch, others remain at their previous level like citizens who prefer the back row. Curtains are drawn the width of a sigh. The coat-room window keeps its pencil line so wool will not forget its manners. The kitchen flame makes a small blue promise to the coffee. Weather approves of these household decisions as if stamping the margin of the report with a courteous checkmark. By the drive, a low fog tries on the yard the way a gentleman tries on a hat in a store. Does this suit the hedges? Does it suit the steps? The fog decides to sit only in the shallow places where it will be a suggestion rather than a conversation. Tires pass through it with no change in tone. Shoes pass through it and lift a little humour onto cuffs. The cat refuses to acknowledge fog. Cats prefer their weather at window tight. The last paragraph of the report is for timing. The first star appears at the moment when a man at the end of the lane decides to turn his car around rather than continue to pretend he is lost. The second star appears when a plate of meat is covered for the night and slid toward the back of the icebox where tomorrow does its rehearsal. The third star appears when the trooper decides to stop watching for a minute and listen instead. He hears nothing special. That is the kind of special he was hoping to hear. Night arrives without explanation. It does not need one. The report is complete. Weather has filed it in the proper drawer labelled "This day in this county" when the road remembered how to count. If you are awake, you may approve the filing by listening to the small sound a window makes when it chooses to be closed. If you are drifting, you may allow the breeze in your room to turn you like a page. The sky over the house has returned to plain paper. The hedges have signed nothing. The gravel is off duty. The air is pleased with itself for not becoming a story. The uniform is it the story. The story is the hour that puts a crease in the uniform, and the way a badge learns the temperature of the day. The troopers who happen to be nearest are not chasing anything. They are practicing their routes as if the roads were scales on a piano. Today the notes are routine, until they are art. Luck does not wear a hat. It borrows one. In this county, Luck borrows the hat of a trooper who woke before his alarm and decided against toast. He drives the familiar loop that touches the diner, the hardware store, the choir of telephone poles, and the turn that slips past a country house, with a driveway that has changed its mind about being quiet. He doesn't know that Luck is riding with him. He only knows that the air is honest and the coffee is capable. At the diner a pot stands like a lighthouse. Cups arrive and depart. Someone speaks of deer that have been busy in the orchard. Someone speaks of the school board and the length of its next meeting. The trooper does not add to these conversations. He nods to the waitress whose uniform is also practicing routine and asks for coffee to go. Paper cup. Lid with a shy mouth. 2 sugars if that is what the day suggests. The day suggests nothing. The waitress chooses 2. Luck approves. On the counter a tray of donuts looks like a ring of life preservers. The trooper declines because sugar is a negotiation, and this hour will prefer steadiness. He holds the paper cup the way one holds an idea that might become useful. Outside, the thin breeze is filing its own report. The bell above the door makes the sound that bells make when they are tired of their own songs. Down the road, a second trooper finishes a form that likes blank spaces too much. He places the clipboard on the passenger seat where clipboards go when they are asked to behave, and turns the key with the patience of a man who has never hurried an engine. His radio murmurs the alphabet to itself. He answers in a calm voice that doesn't disturb the air. He is it assigned to anyone in particular? He is assigned to the morning. At the gas station, the bell counts arrivals that mean nothing, and then counts one that will enter a newspaper without intending to. The young attendant learns that men in suits speak a different kind of hello when they are far from their desks. He learns that even city tires have to breathe the same rural air and that rural air enjoys watching. He hands out directions to the lake that no one takes. He is an unlisted witness. He does not know that witnesses often carry rags. A call comes in, not a trumpet, a wooden flute. The desk sergeant in town asks a favour. Be visible near the crossroads. Folks say the road looks borrowed. No rush. Check on the grocery. Check on the station. Keep an eye on the lane with the mailbox that has been receiving too many glances. The trooper says of course and places the paper cup in the holder that remembers to grip only at the middle. Luck chooses turns. The first trooper takes the left he always takes. The second trooper drifts a block east because a truck with ladders asked politely to enter the lane. The result is that two cars with badges slide into the geography like commas. They add a pause to a sentence that was hoping to remain a run-on. No sirens, no lights. The commas ask for clarity. Across the counter at the grocery, the owner ties string with the competence of winter. He notices a car that has returned for a second visit and does it purchase mustard either time. He notices callers who ask to use the payphone and then do not call anyone, as if the act of lifting the receiver could fix the map in their heads. He does not add up anything aloud. He puts the coins in the drawer and straightens a stack of paper sacks. Law lives in sacks too. They hold what they can hold. One trooper parks at an angle that watches two directions at once. He does not know that anyone is watching him. Men in suits notice uniforms even when they are facing the other way. Suits adjust their sentences, sand down their adverbs, select the more innocent verb. Troopers notice sentences that have been adjusted. All this happens quietly, like weather rearranging itself in the margins of a page. The second trooper performs the gentle ritual called being seen. He drives past slowly enough that people remember badges, and fast enough that no one feels hunted. This small theatre has many results. A man who intended to park badly parks well. A car that would have pretended the lane belonged only to it chooses the pull-off near the hedges. Two men who plan to stand together for air stand apart and consider the sky. Luck sits on the fence with the sparrows. It watches the timing of small mistakes. A driver makes a U-turn that belongs to a different county. A second driver parks too close to the mailbox and then remembers mailboxes are citizens and corrects himself. A third driver forgets to remove the city sticker from his windshield. None of these are crimes. They are details. Details shake hands with notebook paper and become friends quickly. Inside the house, a room of men decides to send a man to the porch to count parking. He opens the door and meets a temperature he was not expecting. He changes his mind and returns. The cousin in the coat room notes the exit and the re-entry. The cousin does not ask questions. The cousin places a hat back on its shelf with the affection that careful work is allowed to feel. Coffee travels. In the cab of a trooper car, steam curls up and finds the radio frequency, which does not mind. In the grocery, a pot on a shelf near the slicing machine keeps a low promise. In the kitchen of the house, another pot resumes leadership of the hour. Between these three bubbles, the county has enough warmth to make good choices slowly. One trooper decides to stretch his legs. He leaves the engine asleep and carries his paper cup into the station, where the bell rope breathes. The young attendant straightens at the sight of a badge, the way a pencil straightens at the sight of a ruler. They talk tires and weather, those two eternal jurisdictions. The trooper asks about traffic and receives an answer shaped like a shrug made of words. Nothing wrong, just not usual. The trooper says not usual is worth another lap. Luck chooses a sound to press against a moment. It presses a cough into the side yard of the house, the cough of a man who forgot that hedges also hear. A trooper does not hear this cough. He hears an engine turn over too quickly and stall, and then begin again as if coached. He looks up the lane and sees only branches. He writes a line anyway. Lines do not require reasons at first, they require ink. The radio in the second trooper's car offers a name of a town 3 counties over and a reminder about a training next month. He answers with the standard words that mean "I heard you" and "I am here." He considers asking for another car and decides that asking is a kind of weather he will use later if clouds develop. For now he is a barometer. He watches the needle. Meanwhile, the grocery owner has one of those small instincts that make communities function. He places a gallon of water and a stack of paper cups next to the register. If a badge comes in, water will be ready. If a stranger needs to slow a pulse, water will be ready. Cups are not laws, they are instruments of pace. He hates to throw away cups. He likes to refill them. He straightens the stack with a finger that has known string and seasons. At the diner, the waitress who chose 2 sugars is finishing a crossword from last month. She thinks of the first trooper and hopes his day stays ordinary. She knows that ordinary in uniform is a success, dressed as an errand. She refills a pot. She wipes a counter. Outside the window, a car she does not recognize nudges its nose into a space that does not belong to it. She makes a mental note and then throws it away. Mental trash day. The first trooper returns to the crossroads and leans back in the seat. Paper cup, warmth in hands. He reads the lane the way a librarian reads a patron who does not know what book he wants. The patron tries not to be interesting and becomes interesting by trying. The trooper sips and waits. He is interested in the book. He is interested in the way the patron reads the room. Luck does not shout, it tilts. A car approaches the lane from the far end of the county road, realizes it has missed the turn, signals too late, and performs a resigned arc into the pull-off. The arc includes a brief kiss of gravel that sounds like an apology. The trooper hears apology well. He writes down the plate and the colour and the trim like a man adding cloves to a recipe that will need them later to explain itself. From town, a third car with a badge begins to drift in this direction, because dispatch has the ancient gift of listening to the tone of a pause. The tone today says no rush, and also do it leave your friends alone on the road that has learned a new conversation. The third car does not turn on sirens. Sirens are for stories that already know they are stories. This story is still a room that considers furniture. Law is at only the moment of contact. Law is also the contact list. A call goes to a supervisor who is eating soup that has finally decided to be soup. The supervisor places the spoon on the saucer because he is that kind of person, and asks how many cars and how many plates and how many times the gas station bell rang. Numbers arrive like guests who respect coats. He says thank you to the air and arranges one more patrol to be nearby without being obvious. In the house, a telephone on a small table extends its neck and then retracts. It has a voice that tries to be professional and becomes tender by accident. A man answers, a man agrees. The telephone returns to its cradle the way a canoe returns to shore after a short test of the current. The cousin hears none of this. The cousin hears sleeves. Luck enjoys instruments, taps the needle of the fuel gauge in the second trooper's car, reminding him to stop at the station for a few gallons. He pulls in and asks for a modest amount, as if he were buying a sandwich and didn't intend to stay. While the tank accepts the day's arithmetic, he steps inside for a water he did not know he wanted. The attendant, who has learned where cups live, offers one without speech. The trooper drinks, tastes the county and the paper, and looks back at his car as if a sentence waited there. It does. The sentence is another car. This one from a state that is shy about sending its plates to these parts. The plate is clean, and the car is clean, and the driver is practicing a kind of blankness that comes from city elevators. The trooper notices the blankness and how it refuses to fit among brooms and oil cans. He does not stop the car. He writes the plate, and the time, and the colour, and the small dent near the trunk that looks like a thought about a different day. The first trooper eases his car forward, and a small stone snaps from the tyre and taps the fender in a way that remembers summer. He smiles because stone language be comforting. He pulls into the groceries lot and nods through the glass. The owner lifts the gallon a finger width, which in grocer language means, I have water and I have attention. The trooper lifts his cup a finger width, which in trooper language means, thank you, and perhaps later. Luck makes one more choice. It chooses timing. The two troopers in their two places look at their watches at almost the same moment. Not because they are required to, and not because of the training. They look because a day has a hinge, and it is polite to notice hinges. They both see that the minute hand is in that place where coffee tastes more like a plan than a drink. They both decide to move. The first turns toward the lane, the second turns toward a vantage that has not yet been used. The road receives them like a host who has set an extra chair without making a fuss. Cars adjust themselves. The cat moves to a dignified distance. The hedges practice the position known as friendly neutrality. The driveway continues to speak fluent gravel. The house finishes an internal sentence and allows the end of it to travel under the door and into the yard as a change in the pressure of air. Troopers hear pressure. They do not call it pressure, they call it tie. Coffee in paper cups cools at rates that can be measured and rates that cannot. The trooper finishes what remains and sets the cup on the dash, where cups go when they are graduates. He checks the mirror. He checks the lane. He checks the part of himself that likes to hurry. It is sitting down for once. He thanks it, silently, for its cooperation. He turns the wheel until the car points toward the sentence he intends to read. Law is at a storm arriving. Law is a barometer being consulted by people who know storms and who also know roofs. The men with badges will step only as far as the minute requires. The men in suits will measure that step and then adjust their hats. Luck will sit on the fence and watch as if it had written the play. Coffee will wait in cups at the diner for later when this becomes a story and someone needs something to hold while the words find their way to the report. If you are drifting, let the sound of tires deciding to continue do the breath that moves your boat. If you are awake, notice how many small choices fit inside a word like patrol, a lid pressed onto a cup, a pencil placed on a page, a car parked where it can see two directions, a man who does not take a donut because sugar is a negotiation. None of this is a chase. All of it is a chapter. Soon enough, the commas on the road will invite a period. Before that, there will be one more sip of something warm, one more glance at the lane, one more line in a notebook that likes to be written with a pencil that has seen all the ordinary days and understands why this one asked for 2 sugars and a little patience. Backyards are for laundry lines and improvised baseball, and dogs who believe fences are suggestions. They are for gardens that try hard, and for chairs that do not mind grass. On this day, the backyard behind the country house does not change its shape. It changes its job. For a few careful hours it pretends to be a room where important sentences are spoken, and then folded away like tablecloths. It does this without acquiring walls. The lawn is it new. It has learned seasons. It has learned that boots in spring mean mud, and boots in fall mean decisions. It accepts souls the way a ledger accepts numbers. Today the grass records with the modest pressure of a thumb. A heel here, a toe there. The story of the hour is written in green that will spring back tomorrow. A good temporary boardroom leaves no permanent mark. Chairs arrive in a procession that looks comic if you do not know why chairs are serious. 2 from the kitchen that have heard recipes become laws, and then gentle arguments. 4 from the neighbour who likes to help when help gets to wear shoes, a folding set that lives in the attic and pretends it does gnats. The chairs settle under trees that have no opinion. The arrangement is not a circle and not a line. It is a shape that lets men look at one another and also at the sky, in case the sky should offer counsel. A table makes a brief visit. It is light but determined. It holds a pitcher of water and glasses that believe in their clarity. The glasses have been polished by a cousin who likes quiet achievements. The table also hosts an ashtray that asks to be emptied before anyone notices it needs to be. Boardrooms generate small ashtrays the way kitchens generate crumbs. It is good to accept this without debate. The house reaches into its pockets and produces a blanket for the bench. The blanket is its symbolism. It is kindness toward trousers that were cut for city chairs. A cushion appears on the step where an elder might sit if he wishes to be difficult without admitting it. The cushion forgives. The step forgives. The elder has not yet arrived. Men come out of the house the way steam leaves a kettle. Not all at once, in measured puffs. A pair first to test the air. Another pair to carry a sentence that will sound better under leaves. A single man who wants to stand while he thinks, because standing lets him imagine he is thinking at all. They take their places without taking ownership. The backyard remains a backyard. The men borrow it. There is a language for rooms without walls. Voices find it quickly. They lower themselves until they do not echo. They leave space between phrases so birds can interrupt without being rude. They travel just far enough to cross from chair to chair, and not so far that hedges will feel obliged to participate. It is the language of caution that has not yet become fear. On the lawn a string of ants continues its work. They carry something that looks like a crumb, and probably is. Men glance down and then remember to look up, because people who forget small lives are punished by large ones. The ants do not pause for politics. They were appointing committees long before men thought to name them. The cousin from the coat room stands in the doorway with a tray. Water on the left, coffee on the right, sugar holding still. The cousin waits for the pause that will accept service. When the pause arrives, it is almost invisible. A chair leg shifts. A hand rests. A sentence folds its last word. The cousin steps forward and becomes the kind of detail a backyard boardroom relies on to keep itself from turning into opinion. A bird behind the maple decides to chair the meeted without proposals. It clears its throat in the feathered way and says, "The only rule is to keep the hour from behaving like a parade." Everybody agrees. The bird forgets it agreed and sings anyway. The men find themselves improved by this. A man carries a paper that does not look like a paper. He keeps it in a jacket pocket, the way one keeps a photograph that has already done its job. He doesn't take it out. He places his hand over the pocket now and then as if to confirm that paper could be heavy if it tries. Another man holds nothing and seems to have everything he requires. There are many ways to picture authority, and none of them are accurate for long. The first subject, is it the first subject? It is the test subject. Can this place host sentences that were meant for hotel rooms and back booths? Will the wind steal the winter from the words? Will the trees accept new names the way old trees accept lightning? The men speak of travel, and of tired roads, and of cousins who know useful people. These are safe stones on a shallow crossing. They look for deeper water without stepping into it. Someone asks about the day. He does not look at his watch. He looks at the light under the trees. The light says afternoon that will not hurry. The men lean on that truth the way a porch leans on its posts. One says a short thing about a long matter. Another says a long thing about a short matter. The backyard breathes and keeps breathing. Over by the fence a rake lies down the way tools lie when they believe they have earned the right to be seen doing nothing. Its wooden handle remembers the last autumn and the one before. Men glance at the rake and are reminded of work that makes blisters, work that does not involve rooms or paper or hats. Something in their shoulders loosens. Important days are best endured with small reminders that most days are unimportant and therefore perfect. An older man arrives from the house with steps that know ankles. He chooses the cushion on the step and makes the cushion look like an honourable compromise. He removes his hat and balances it on his knee the way a waiter balances a tray. The hat has been everywhere, the knee has been everywhere else. He listens for a while as if he is reading a newspaper written in wind. Then he speaks, and the chairs seem to move closer by an inch, though no chair moves. His sentences are made of yesterday and tomorrow, with just enough today to keep them steady. He says the county is a city, that fields notice, that hedges observe, that backyards remember. He says cities forget because they must, but the country never promised forgetfulness. He says a plan that depends on being invisible should consider scheduling an appointment with modesty. No one writes any of this down. Everyone writes it down. The pitcher empties itself at a reasonable pace. A glass spills a little onto the table, and the water finds the one uneven board and pays for the mistake by running off into grass that forgives. The cousin replaces a glass with a dry one and takes the damp away before it to notice it is damp. This is the difference between a backyard and a boardroom. In a boardroom, a spill becomes a metaphor. In a backyard, it becomes thirst for the roots of a lawn. Somewhere beyond the hedges, a truck downshifts while descending a hill. The sound arrives like a footnote from a practical world. Men pause to respect the footnote. Then they continue. A woman in the kitchen glances at the clock and decides that the next tray will be fruit. Fruit is a softness that survives attention. A slight mist rises from the grass in a place where the sun has decided to be generous. It curls around shoe leather and quietly mentions that the earth is doing its slow work without consulting anyone. Men who hear it are improved for a minute. Men who do it hear it will still receive the benefit because backyards are democratic when it comes to grace. The second subject is resources. Not numbers, not ledgers, the humankind, who can be asked for a favour at short notice, who will say yes before the sentence ends, who prefers to be asked on Tuesdays, who wants a handshake to come with a promise that the handshake will not be the only evidence. The names spoken are old names in new arrangements. The arrangements sound like recipes, but they are not eaten. The cat, who has taken a temporary position as sergeant-at-arms, walks through the assembly without regard for titles. It inspects shoes, approves 2, ignores 3, plants itself exactly in the path between the table and the man who wishes to pace. The man stops. The cat wins. Order is restored by a creature who does not care about order, but cares very much about paths. A chair complains. Not loudly, enough to remind everyone that wood and screws and gravity are a partnership. The man sitting in the chair rises slightly and resettles. The chair thanks him by becoming quiet again. All successful meetings include an apology from a chair. This one is accepted and forgotten. Voices review geographies. Streets with friendly corners, discussing which names can be said plainly and which should be referred to as the man who knows the locksmith, who is a locksmith. Backyards do not mind euphemisms. They have heard families use them for years to cover kindness and small failures. The sun moves as if adjusting the room for a second session. Shadows recommit to their jobs. The elder on the step adjusts his hat even though the hat is on his head. He asks for the pitcher and pours water as if signing checks. He suggests, without raising his voice, that the business of importance should not step over the business of kindness. A nod here, a nod there, a note taken in the handwriting of memory. From the house, a telephone rings, one short and one long. In the kitchen, someone answers with a tone that makes all telephones want to improve themselves. A message is carried to the back door and passed like a folded napkin. The man who receives it reads the shape of the paper without unfolding it. He returns it. The paper looks pleased to be part of something without having to reveal its words. A breeze tests the edges of sentences and finds them sound. It does its steal. It participates by being the reason men lean forward to be heard, which makes them briefer and truer. The breeze also carries the smell of the river that keeps this county honest. Rivers are board members without chairs. They attend all meetings by right of geography. Near the fence, a string of laundry pins lives on a sagging wire. The pins are off duty because laundry has been given the day off in favour of coats and plates. One of the men notices the pins and remembers a grandmother who believed that a line full of shirts was the most beautiful flag a nation could fly. He smiles. He does not say why. The smile joins the minutes and improves them by a sliver measured in patience. The third subject is departure. How to leave a place the way a good guest leaves. How to make the driveway seem like it was busier with chores than with ideas. How to stagger movement so that hedges will think the wind has changed rather than the plan. Men compare watches and then look away from their watches because watches make one too aware of wrists. They agree on the choreography that keeps neighbours from changing their recipes for dinner conversation. A distant dog tries on a bark and discards it. Somewhere a screen door admits and releases a child who was not told to be quiet because children rarely obey that instruction unless they have already decided to. The child does not appear here. The child appears in the idea of the county as a reason to keep afternoons ordinary. Meetings that want to last get smaller when children run past them with nothing to pay. A notebook appears without being introduced. It is small and has corners that remember rain. A man writes nothing that an audience would pay to read. He writes times, and the word agreed, and the word later, and the name of a town that is easy to pronounce. He closes the book and puts it away. This is a polite book. It does not rattle in a pocket. The cousin returns with the promised fruit. Slices arranged like the geometry of friendly planets. Apples that know how to be calm. Grapes that do not brag. The plate is set down near the elder who takes 2 pieces, one to eat and one to consider. He passes the second to the man on his right, and in this way the meeting remembers that passing is a kind of argument you can win without anyone losing. The backyard learns the 4th subject on its own, breath. When many people share one patch of air, breath becomes part of the furniture. In a room it can feel contained. Out here it travels. Breath mixes with leaf talk and river smell and the smoke from a cigarette that believes it is the tip of a pencil. The mixture persuades men to shorten speeches and lengthen silences. Decisions like this place. They arrive with a towel over their shoulders, ready to work. It is halfway through the hour when the elder sets his hat on his head again. Hats are clocks. This one says you may continue, but you must also prepare for the end. Men accept the half-warning and begin to assign small tasks to minutes that have not arrived. A call to be placed from a different county, a letter to be shaped like a receipt for something ordinary, a visit to a barber where the chair will hear more than the ears. Someone laughs once in a way that proves nothing is on fire. The laugh is brief, it folds itself like a handkerchief and goes back into the pocket for later. Laughter is illegal in a backyard boardroom. It is encouraged by birch leaves that chime. It is discouraged by hedges that eavesdrop. The balance is perfect when laughter occurs only as a relief to wood and grass. A man stands and walks to the edge of the lawn and looks across fields that are thinking of sleep. He makes a phone in his head call to a man who would be here if he lived closer to trees. He hears the voice say the one thing he needed to hear. He nods and turns back. No one asks about the nod. They accept it as a vote from distance. The table gets lighter as glasses empty and decisions fill. That is how tables prefer it. Heavy with objects at the start, heavy with agreement at the end. The cousin removes what can be removed and leaves what still has work. The ashtray retires and is replaced by a small dish that has no job, but believes in good company. A small wind pushes the shadow of a branch across the elder's sleeve. He looks at the shadow and seems to read it. He says the house will need to be itself again by supper. He says chairs should be returned before their owners decide to remember they own them. He says the driveway will forgive more if it is thanked. He says the grocery will receive a visit that looks like gratitude and will be gratitude. Everyone nods. The bird in the maple agrees with 3 notes. They speak the last subject last because they are our fools. It is the subject of attention. How quickly it grows when given food. How slowly it dies when starved of nouns. How best to feed it verbs that do not lead to headlines. They decide to let attention think it has solved a puzzle, when in fact it has only solved the box the puzzle came in. This is it cunning. It is survival disguised as courtesy. The elder stands. The backyard becomes only itself again by one measure, and remains a boardroom by another. Men rise and perform the ritual called leaving in a way that does not look like leaving. They return glasses. They straighten chairs as if this were a church basement after a social. They thank the air without words, because air hates to be thanked with words. The cousin takes the table by its edges and slides it toward the porch. The blanket returns to the bench, having concluded an assignment that involved dignity. The chair that apologized earlier keeps its head down and avoids further conversation. A rake is lifted and leaned more securely against the fence. Tools appreciate being put back by hands that have recently handled decisions. It gives them new stories. Before the men re-enter the house, they pause and perform the one gesture that matters in a place like this. They look at the sky. City men do this openly. Countrymen do it with only their eyebrows. Everyone hears the same verdict. Enough light remains for a calm departure. The hedges have chosen to pretend they did not listen. The lawn has already forgiven the shoes. The backyard has returned to the business of being a yard that will be asked to hold laundry again tomorrow. From the porch, the house watches the return of hats. The boardroom folds itself and slides under the kitchen door where memories are stored beside recipe cards. Out front, the driveway prepares to translate the decisions of the lawn into the choreography of tires. The cat resigns her post and goes in search of a saucer that will confess milk. If you have drifted, this is a good place to stay asleep. The chairs have done their work and are resting. The table is lighter. The boardroom that was not a boardroom has dismissed itself with honors for good behavior. If you are awake, follow one last pair of shoes up the steps, through the door, past the coat room that smells like wool and civility, and back into the house, where the next hour has been waiting, in a room with a sideboard and a clock that speaks only when asked.